In this second part, we're going to take a look at some questions from actual youth across the North Country that I've encountered in my work traveling to different schools and different community groups to talk to people about reproductive health. So the first question we're going to look at is, what is the normal age to identify as part of the LGBTQIA plus community? So right off the bat, we know this is an am I normal question. And it's also kind of a permission seeking question because one of the sort of underlying questions is it okay for me at my age to identify this way? And if I remember, this came from an eighth grade class, so probably 13, 14 years old or so. So am I normal? Permission seeking. So things we want to remember, again, what's the question behind the question? So do I know that this student identified as part of the LGBTQIA plus community? Not necessarily, but I want to keep in mind that maybe that's why they're asking this question. So what I want to remember to do is to remind this person that there's a range of experience, right? And I want to make sure that I'm not just highlighting the extremes, because even saying that there's a spectrum but only mentioning the extremes still makes it difficult to think about that spectrum. We still only think about those two extremes because those were the only things that we mentioned. So we want to mention different experiences along that spectrum that someone might have. So reminding them that some people identify as LGBTQ plus early on in life. Sometimes it's during or after puberty. Sometimes it's later. We've given a few different experiences along that line to make it a little bit easier for that person who's asking this question to realize that it isn't just as a youth or as an adult. It can be anywhere along this lifetime spectrum. The next question is, if you are non-binary, gender neutral, etc., and you're dating someone, what should you call yourself? Their boyfriend, their girlfriend, etc. So kind of a permission seeking question, somewhat an information clarification question too. It might just be out of curiosity, what should that person call themselves? But I like to think of this more as a permission seeking question. So again, this is another opportunity to remember that spectrum, right? And present those different options or those different experiences. So I kind of make a list. So the response I gave was that, A, this can be a great opportunity for someone to express their identity and their relationship through the language that they use. So some folks use terms like partner, companion, significant other, terms that we're all fairly familiar with or probably come across. But there are other terms that people use that maybe we aren't as familiar with. So terms like both friend or Z friend, so taking that Z pronoun and replacing boy or girl with it. And someone might not be familiar with those terms, but being able to present them with those options that some folks choose to use, or for them encapsulates their identity, might be eye opening for them. And they might be able to say, oh, I didn't know that term existed, or yeah, that seems like the right term for me. Another point, this last point here towards the end, is reinforcing um, consent and communication. So as long as everyone in the relationship is comfortable with whatever words are used, there aren't really any right or wrong answers. Another kind of subtle point that I like to throw in there in that last sentence is that I said as long as everyone in the relationship is comfortable rather than as long as both people in the relationship are comfortable. As we know, not necessarily all relationships are structured around two people. There are relationship dynamics that involve more than two partners. And so we want to, again, make that environment more inclusive, not just based on things like sexual orientation or identity or race, but even some of the things that maybe we don't think about. And there are people who structure their relationships differently than we might think initially when we're speaking in front of this group. So that can be another little language tweak when we speak about relationships or partners, is to not necessarily structure our language around a relationship as being between two people, but a relationship can be between any number of people. So I prefer to use the term everyone rather than both people in that situation. Question number 3 is kind of related to the first one we talked about. So if you're 14, do you really know your sexuality or do you know it when you're older? So again, this can be an am I normal question. This could be a 14-year-old who is questioning their identity and trying to figure it out. Or it could be a 14-year-old who's just curious about when people figure this part of themselves out. So again, the theme kind of comes back. That spectrum is really important to talk about here too, right? Those differences in experience. So the response that I gave back, some people might feel their one orientation, go through a period of questioning, and then realize that that's actually how they identify. Some people will go through that period of questioning and come out the other side and realize that they weren't what they thought they might be, they were something else. Um, it's also important to note that not everyone will question their sexual identity. Some people feel that that's a requirement, that during those teenage years or during those pubescent years, that if you're not struggling with your sexual identity, then something's abnormal. And so we want to reinforce that too, that if someone doesn't question their sexual identity, that's a valid experience, and not everyone's going to go through that. So again, we've kind of discussed some different points along that spectrum of experience that folks might go through. The last two examples we're going to dive into are more specifically values-based, and we're going to use that answer framework to kind of think about how we could structure a response to these. So the first of these two examples is, do you suggest coming out in middle school or waiting? This is also kind of a permission-seeking question, but we're going to look at it from a values-based angle and look at this answer perspective. So we take the A, we want to affirm the asker. So this can be something like, I get asked that question a lot. That's a really common question. A lot of people your age ask questions like that, something so that that asker feels affirmed and feels validated in their question. Then we want to note that it's a values-based question, so something along the lines of that I can't necessarily give an answer for everyone, but I can provide some information that might be helpful. State any relevant facts. So here, a relevant fact might be that the coming out process can be difficult for some people. It's not necessarily difficult for everyone. And again, that's kind of a little bit of a fact we can lean on as we dive into this values-based question. What's the range of experience and values? Again, we've kind of hammered this home. Different people come out in different ways at different times. So here's where we can use that soy model again, right? Some may do it publicly, others may do it privately. You may do it X, Y, or Z. You may do it a different way. Some people do this, others do that. You might do neither. You might do both, right? The actual examples that we're giving are going to vary from case to case, but we want to present those different options and those different experiences. Encourage talking to a trusted adult. So this can vary a little bit based on our exact role and who we are. So for me, as an outside educator who comes into a classroom, I don't often establish close relationships with those students because I see them for maybe 2 or 3 class periods, and then I've finished my sessions with them. So encouraging them to talk to a teacher, a guidance counselor, a school nurse, a sports coach, whoever for them that trusted adult is going to be, especially with questions like this of that values-based nature, can be really important. And then remaining available, again, kind of going back to encouraging talking to a trusted adult, can be difficult. I know that's something that for me is difficult, being an outside person coming in. It's difficult for me to be available to those students because they're off to their next class period, I'm off to my office, and it's difficult for that follow-up. But oftentimes going through their classroom teacher who has contact with me can be useful as well. For other folks in different environments, in different spaces, remaining available might be pretty easy. If you are that regular classroom teacher, then it's really easy for you to remain available because you're probably seeing that youth every day or every other day in the class that you have with them. The last option, or the last question that we're presented with, was from, I believe, another eighth grader. And the question is, essentially, this student thinks they're trans, they were assigned female at birth, they feel masculine, they've changed the name that they use in their daily life, but not at home because they don't feel validated at home. Their parents don't accept them for dating another female student, and so they're afraid to come out with their gender identity as well. So the question is, how can I be more comfortable in my own identity? And that's a tricky question. So again, the way we handle it is really important. Affirming right off the bat, again, very important. Especially in a situation like this, we want to thank that student for being confident and comfortable enough to share that information with us. Even anonymously, this question was submitted anonymously on an index card, but in my response back, typed response back, I still want to thank that student for sharing their experience. Again, we want to note that it's values-based. Stating relevant facts might be that a lot of people don't feel comfortable with themselves for a variety of reasons, not just for sexual identity or gender identity reasons. There's an entire range of reasons why people aren't comfortable with themselves. And so that's a fairly common experience. And that this person in their story reminds us that they have a supportive partner. So reminding them that that can be very helpful too. Again, what's the range of experience? Some, others, you, right? Some people come out this way, some people might come out this way. That experience looks different for folks. Encouraging talking to a trusted adult. Here again, specifically important because the adults we would assume are the trusted adults aren't. The parents aren't the trusted adults in this case. So if we have the opportunity and the student feels comfortable in the right situation, we can help them find that trusted adult. Again, it might be us, it might be someone else, but we can encourage them to have that conversation. Other options for remaining available, if you're someone like me who's in and out, leaving a business card or contact info, leaving social media. So if you're using Instagram, Facebook, whatever, letting these students know that if you've got questions, you can shoot a question, to our Instagram messages and we'll see it there and we can respond that way also. Or other resources that are in the community, be that mental health resources, LGBTQ plus supportive resources. Maybe there's a youth group, a support group, particular events that are going on. So being able to keep that communication going and remaining available can help that student as well. I hope some of those tools and those structures were helpful and that you'll be able to take them with you and apply them in a classroom or in a practice or wherever we're interacting with youth who might be LGBTQ plus or might not.